Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Happy Hour Economics. My name's Matt Rousu.
Hi, and I'm Jadrian Wooten.
We're excited to present this podcast. So we are recording this 2 days before episode 1 is about to drop. So any feedback that you have provided on episode 1, we're sorry it's not incorporated yet. But excited to be back here. Between when we recorded the first and the second, we've certainly done a lot of work to get the first one live. Is the biggest change that we actually have a name now, JJ?
We have a name. We have a Twitter account. We have a Gmail account. We've created a bunch of accounts.
We have a number of accounts, and people know that we're doing this. So it's exciting. And our plan, we also have a plan for when these will drop. Given the title's Happy Hour Economics, we figured Thursday is often a night people, especially college students will go out for happy hour or for whatever reason. So.
I think Thursdays are a good time, right? You can listen to it on Friday. That can be if you're more of a morning person, that can be your good way to start your last day of the week.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you are in the office today and you're feeling better. The family had a bout of
things are much, much better. But I'm coming from the office today, which means today's drink is non-alcoholic, so I'll throw this up here. It's Virgil's handcrafted vanilla cream. So going a little lighter today, just so that since I am in the office, be a little safer.
No, I agree with that. There's probably
as a dean, you should appreciate.
There is probably an official policy at Virginia Tech. I know at Susquehanna there is a policy on that. I am not at my office, so I'm actually having the mug should give it away. It's Marzoni's, and I went and got a growler refill on their Monday night. They have the discounted growler night. So Patchway Pale Ale. It's an American pale ale.
I cannot imagine a more different drinking combination than me having a vanilla cream soda and you just pouring straight out of a growler.
It's a little bit different. You won last week, and I'm sure that's a delicious non-alcoholic cream ale. But I got to say, I think this week I might have been better on this one.
Yeah, I love a good vanilla cream ale.
Yeah.
So Matt, for people who are new, why don't we just real quick tell our new listeners about who we are?
Sure. So I've been teaching economics for over 20 years, I guess, since the first class. I'm the dean of the Sigmund Weiss School of Business at Susquehanna University, where I'm also a professor of economics. And I've been at Susquehanna actually since 2004.
And my name is Jadrian Wooten, and I'm a collegiate faculty member at Virginia Tech and just finished up my first semester on campus. But I have been teaching economics for about a decade. So I think this is technically I'd say this is year 9 of like full-time permanent employment, but right over a decade if you count teaching in grad school. So we'll say I usually round off and say about a decade. So I'm about half of you.
Yeah, and I mean we met at first it was at a teaching conference. I'm sure I can't even tell you which one. You probably C-Tree. But
I think it was C-Tree in Minneapolis.
Okay.
If I like go back in my notes, I think that's the furthest I remember back.
Okay. So met there, but then we interacted a whole lot because until just recently you were an hour apart, and we have a Center for Economics, Business, and Entrepreneurship Education. There were other reasons that we saw each other or hung out, but I know as dean, right, part of this mission of the center is to help K-12 teachers on new and innovative ways to teach. Part of our job is to get great people in front of the teachers. And so I was reaching out to Jadrian. I reached out many times and appreciate it because I don't know how many times you came to talk to the folks there, but it was quite a handful. And I know we really appreciated that.
I don't think I ever said no. I very rarely say no to an opportunity to go speak because I get to meet new people. I get to try new foods, new restaurants, new breweries, which I always really like. Even like, so this is kind of weird. Like I always thought Marzoni's was the local brewery because the Marzoni's kind of near where State College was like, it was in Altoona. So it wasn't that close.
Yeah.
So we actually didn't have a Marzoni's, and I was like, oh, this is a cool local place that Matt likes. And then I think I went to Altoona and I drove by one and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't a local place.
No, I mean it's they only have 4 or 5, so
Yeah.
it's not super local, but it's handcrafted. It's good stuff. It's good
I'm
stuff.
trying to think of the places you and I have drank in Sealands Groves. We have gone to Marzoni's. We've gone to Applebee's. I remember having a drink with you there.
Applebee's.
We went someplace in the mall.
Garfield's.
Was it Garfield? I think it was Garfield's.
Yeah, there's the brew pub is the most famous. I'm sure we've been there. The Sealands Grove Brewing Company.
Maybe there's a place downtown we went. There was like a
that was it.
seafoody place.
Okay, the seafoody place is BJ's.
Okay.
BJ's Ribbon Steak, and then there's Isabella's. Yeah. I don't keep a list.
I'm trying to think of if there's other places I've had drinks in Sealands Grove. I don't think I've drank as many different places in another city other than like where I've lived, right?
Sure,
like if I've lived somewhere, that's different. But Sealands Grove might be kind of up towards the top in terms of number of drinks I've had.
We've got to be number one in something here, so that's good. So our topic today that we're covering that I'm kind of excited about, and the timing on this is quite intentional, as this is dropping just a couple days before the New Year's, is behavioral economics. What's the quick paragraph summary of what behavioral economics is, Jadrian? What would you?
Okay, so this one's tough, right? Like, how do you summarize an entire field of economics? The way that I tell it to my students in terms of behavioral economics is I say, look, everything we've learned before, we assume that you are rational and you know exactly what you're doing. Behavioral economics is where we realize you might not know what you're doing. And so I talk to them about, in a sense of like, how do we make decisions when we aren't fully informed, or if we have misperceptions about ourselves or the people we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I don't know that, I mean, I asked you, I'm not sure I have a good sentence description. Mm-hmm. There are certain things we would teach in economics where we would assume it shouldn't matter. But because we're humans, it indeed would matter. One of the ones that I think for companies, what's the default on benefits, the benefits that you receive? Is the default that you're automatically contributing into a retirement plan and you have to opt out of contributing? Or is it the default that no, you're going to contribute zero and you just choose whatever amount you might want to contribute? In theory, it doesn't make a difference. You have total choice over what amount you would want to give into your retirement plan. But in the real world, right, there's some amount that's checked as the default, and people, that matters. That's been shown to matter.
So I think, one of the first times I ever came across like really behavioral economics, I don't remember really learning about it much in grad school, maybe a little bit as an undergrad, but like very, very little. But I actually learned a lot of it my very first year at Penn State. I did an honors thesis with a student who was a health policy major and an economics major, incredibly brilliant student. She was really interested in organ donation and whether we should do an opt-in or an opt-out system. And so for those of you who don't know, the United States has an opt-in system. So when you go and get your driver's license, you have to say, I'm an organ donor. But there's a lot of other countries around the world, it's an opt-out system. They assume you're an organ donor unless you fill out the paperwork that says otherwise. And if you look at the differences in organ donation rates, the United States is really low and these other countries are really high. So she was writing her thesis on kind of the ethics of this opt-in, opt-out system, and whether, like, some places even have like a double opt-in system where not only do you have to check yes, once you get the card, you have to like sign it and then send it back again. And so it was really fascinating. Like I had never really like gotten to learn it about any of that.
Yeah. It's weird because I went to a school that wasn't really known as a behavioral school for graduate school, Iowa State, but my research moved into experimental auctions, largely as I presented my dissertation advisor, who was also, I was his research assistant, with like 15 different ideas. He was like, well, this one seems okay. And actually I have money that we could do this. I was like, well, then we have a dissertation topic. And it was using experimental auctions to estimate it was experimental actions on genetically modified food products, and it was examining how do consumers react to labels, what's the value of information. But experimental economics and behavioral economics were somewhat intertwined, especially at first. To the first Nobel Prize that went to a behavioral economist went at the same time it was co-awarded to an experimental economist. And if you ask me to name years that somebody got it, I can name you like this one. And it was because it was Vernon Smith and Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, and it was 2002, right? And it was right after I got my doctorate that one came out. Now I say that, and we're going to look it up, and I was wrong, and it was 01 or something. But so I kind of, some of my research tied into that, but then I think I learned a lot. Honestly, I learned a lot more probably by just reading things here and there. I thought Nudge was a pretty good book when I read Nudge pretty much right when it came out.
I remember reading Nudge, and I remember not loving the beginning of it, but loving the second half of it. And or one of those orders. I remember one side was slow, but I remember that I really just the rapid fire examples of things like law subversion, things like framing, stuff like that.
Yep.
And so I'm going to actually ask you this because I'm really curious about this, because I remember this as one of the topics in the book, even though I read it so many years ago. It was about how do we help people lose weight, especially kids in cafeterias. And it's a matter of whether you place cookies or fruit, right? Near the cash register, right? So those of you who don't know the story or don't know the topic, essentially whatever you put near the checkout, you're going to buy more of that. So if you load it down with fruit, somebody's going to grab a fruit as they walk out. If you load it down with cookies, they're going to grab cookies as they walk out. And I remember that was a hugely controversial idea that somebody is picking fruit. And I'm curious your take on that, whether you find that an offensive thing to do, because I look at it and I say, well, you have to pick something. Yeah. You have to put something at the cash register. Why is it necessarily bad that somebody picked fruit? Right? I mean, they obviously picked their preferences.
Why would it be bad if somebody picked fruit at the cash register? Or
well, the idea that somebody is making I forget the name. There's a fancy term for it, choice architecture, right? I think that was the
term. I mean, the way things are presented will certainly affect what people choose. I don't think I didn't find that controversial. I mean, it made some sense. And I
think the controversy was that I guess the norm is people put cookies, candy, snacks by the cash register, and then I think I remember this being the big controversy was some bureaucrat is changing it to fruit. I'm well, they got to pick something. You can't just have nothing there.
No. So the part about the book that I probably have the most qualms about is the idea of how much should government get involved in this. And I think there's some arguments for some actions that are okay. What they talk about, it's not libertarian paternalism, I think. Is that the phrasing that they say?
Something paternalism. Yeah.
And so it's the idea that, look, the government might have to do framing. They're not going to force you to make a choice, but the framing could be done in a way that helps out. I think I tend to agree with that. However, I also think there are times where there are behavioral task force that might go a little way from the libertarian paternalism to much more just paternalism, and that I have a little bit more qualms with. But overall, I think the issues on schools, I mean, there was a famous study, although the author actually has gotten in a whole heap of issues for pea hacking, I think is the term.
Oh, this is the Cornell guy.
Yeah, the soup bowl that drained. And so then you wonder, do any of the studies Val, but I actually know somebody pretty well who's a really, really good person and a great researcher who's been part of a lot of that. And I mean, but this idea that if you're drinking from a soup bowl, that a bunch of people from a soup bowl, some of them were automatically designed to drain, others weren't. Anybody could get as much as they wanted, but the ones that were automatically draining, people had more. They didn't know they were having more. They just had more. It's the mindlessly eating, like a group started with, the Thaler tells this story about how a group of people at a party all said, we don't want to put the chips out ahead of time because we'll all want to eat them. Instead of, they could have put the chips out and just not eaten them. But if it's right there, of course, you're going to grab them. And yeah, that makes sense. We're humans. We're not robots. If the chips are hiding away in somebody's pantry, yeah, you're not going to go grab them. Even if you're the host and you know where they are, you're not going to open the door to the pantry, grab the bag, steal a chip. But if they're on the table, everybody will grab one. So
this is why I love behavioral economics, and I love teaching behavioral economics. So for me, it's the very last lesson of the semester. So to give you kind of like a rough idea, my first lesson is like, what are the principles? And I do a little bit of decision making in the very, very beginning. And then I go through like what I would say is a fairly typical principles of microeconomics course, except I do behavioral economics at the very end. And I kind of always pitch it as like, hey, look, I just spent 14 weeks telling you this is how everybody behaves. Now let's talk about how people misbehave and they do completely weird stuff that people don't expect. Or they do unexpectedly unexpected things. And so I always like that kind of idea behind behavioral economics is that there's these known and predictable responses that seem like they would be unpredictable.
So what are the top one or two examples that you teach when you give that lesson? That's not a lesson that I typically do in principle. I have some other weird ones that I do that we'll save for another episode.
I would say that the two that I like the most, so I cover, I think it's taught by Krugman and Wells. They have like 6 predictable ones. I probably can't tell you in order. I should be able to tell you in order, right? So misperception of opportunity costs, so including sunk costs when you shouldn't. There is overconfidence is one of them. There is misperceptions about time, which is why we're having this this conversation, which we can talk about in the second half of this. So misperceptions about your future self, loss aversion, status quo bias, and I'm missing a 6th one.
That's fine.
We'll have to throw that up in a side note of put a little star by the one I missed. So
yeah, and
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, mental accounting. That's the 6th one.
Okay.
So the
mental
ones
accounting meaning like the human brain can only do so much, and
no, I think it's more along the lines of like we misattribute spending and saving, or the way that we spend. So like one of the examples is like when things are 50% off, we say that we saved $100 rather than like recognizing we spent it.
Sure.
Or spending credit cards different than cash. I think so. That's kind of the general mental accounting one. Okay. So my favorite ones are overconfidence, and I really like misperceptions about future self, which I think is closely related with overconfidence. So overconfidence, generally, we believe in ourselves when probably we shouldn't, when we kind of know that we aren't going to do it. And so people are not just overconfident about like what they can do later, but just like if you ask people, there's this great survey they've been doing for like since the 60s. And I'll try to pull it up. That way we can put it on the Substack, or we can put a link inside the video. If you ask people like rate your academic ability compared to others, like more than 50% say they're above average.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So it's academic ability, drive, personal looks, friendliness, leader, like all these measures have all just gone straight up since like the 1960s. And it's a great graph and I love it. And I love to talk to the students about it. It kind of stinks that it's at the end of the semester because like that's always the issue with teaching freshmen is they come in overconfident about their abilities. And that first exam, they kind of get slapped in the face and they're like, whoa, wait a second. I need to change how I'm doing things.
Yeah.
But I love overconfidence. And then the second one is misperceptions about future self. So I always try to tell them it's overconfidence with a time component. And so since this is coming out right before the new year, that seems like it's an appropriate time to do this particular topic. I think a lot of us will sign up for New Year's resolutions. Either we're going to start going to the gym regularly, change their diet. Do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I don't know that I do. I mean, I'd like to lose a few pounds. Always. I mean, I realize I say this, I'm actually a reasonably healthy weight for my frame, but I had knee surgery. Almost 15 years ago, microfracture, and each extra pound you carry it's
Mhm.
it's like 10 because of all the steps you take. It puts a lot more
Yeah.
stress. So 10 pounds would mean a lot. I mean, my goal is not to have knee replacement, quite frankly. And right now I can walk fine and everything, and it generally
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. But that's important. So that I would like to. I know in Britain a lot of places do dry January.
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind doing a dry January with one exception. I've got a trip to Disney with my wife and actually my oldest, because he graduated in 2020 and he wanted a
Mhm.
Disney trip for the like that was the vacation to celebrate, and of course it didn't happen. The three of us are going. He's now 21,
Okay.
and the days we're at Disney, right? Exception, but I've been thinking about that, and for me, I don't drink. It's rare when I have more than say two, maybe a third drinks in any given night, but many nights I do have a beer and I enjoy that.
Yeah.
So, but a month off of that would also help me get to this losing
Yeah.
weight thing too. So I'm kind of thinking about that. How about
So,
you? New Year's
well, so
resolution?
let me tell you a funny story. As you just said that you have that 2 to 3 drinks a night is not unreasonable. I went for the first time ever last year to have a health checkup. I'd been putting it off for forever. And I was like, I'm in my mid-30s now. I got to get a health checkup. So I go and I'm sitting there talking to the physician's assistant. She's going through the questions, right? Do you smoke? Do you exercise? I'm saying no, I don't exercise. And then she gets to okay, well, how much do you drink? And I go, and I paused for a second. She goes, do you drink monthly, weekly? And I go, daily. Like I was like, I have a drink every day. And she turned and she was like shocked. And I was like, I'm in my mind, like, is that a problem? I was like, I only have like one a day.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll sit outside in a hammock and I'll have a beer every day, or I'll have a drink with dinner. And I was like, I didn't think that was a big deal, but apparently shocking to my, and this is the first time I've ever met this person too. So I think I made it worse. And I did try to say, I was like, I don't have a problem. I was like, I just have a beer every day.
Of course, that's what everybody says, right?
Exactly. She's probably like, this guy's lying. No, New Year's resolutions. Okay, yeah. So actually, yes. So you know what? Technically, I think I do have a New Year's resolution. I do not do the traditional New Year's resolution. So I am very bad about, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to change my diet. Like I recognize I'm not going to do it. A lot of people don't, right? A lot of people go in January. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. And they stop after February because we're really bad at committing to stuff.
Yeah.
I would say I don't know that it's necessarily a New Year's resolution, but I do read 52 books a year. So
Okay.
right at the start of January, I always say I'm going to read 52 books this year. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, for 5 or 6 years now. So I guess that's a New Year's resolution, but like, it's not. I don't think of it as one, just because like I'm not increasing it every year. I've done it every single year, so it doesn't feel like.
Yeah, I don't think of. I mean, typically a resolution is something you should do and you don't want to do. And from everything I know about you like reading, and
it's like it's like Lent, right? But Lent people actually do it. It's like New Year's resolution, they quit after like 3 weeks. Lent, they try to make it 40 days. Yeah, so I would say no, I don't have a New Year's resolution, but I also know myself well enough to know that I would quit, so I don't do it.
the question then, how does behavioral economics help in terms of not quitting?
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever done a weight loss bed by chance? I've done one, and I've done them with other people, and I've actually done it with my students to illustrate behavioral economics.
Okay.
Because
no, I don't think I have.
So in theory, right, this is a case where, if you just want to lose weight, you could just say, okay, I'm going to lose weight. But then, of course, it can be tricky not to. In theory, you're better off doing that than telling a group of students, if I don't lose these 10 pounds, I'm going to pay $100 to somebody in this class.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just try to lose weight without telling you this, but I am going to, if I don't, and I've done this. I actually did this with a class that had a set weight I wanted to get to, and said, same story, right? This is for me to, I want to be healthy and want to be able to walk, and all, I had knee surgery a while ago. So, and I told the class, so if and I'll let you decide how it's split up. I could give 100 to one person. We could, split it up 20 ways. I don't teach hundreds, but it would be 20 people, or you could do a drawing where 5 people get $20. And I'll tell them, look, at the beginning, because I'm doing this, there's very little chance I'm failing. Because it's not even the money. I mean, I don't want to lose $100, but the idea of handing over 100 because I couldn't succeed in this would kill me. And the couple times I've done it, it's always I've always succeeded. Always. It's not even been close.
So this is actually, I think, one of my favorite things about behavioral economics. So what you just said right there. So that, for those of you listening, that's a commitment device. It's a way to make sure that somebody commits to what they're doing. But like the way that you actually framed that is really good, because you linked it to another one of the behavioral economics ideas, is loss aversion. It's this idea that I don't want to lose this $100 to someone else. You very easily could have set it up as like, hey, if I make this goal, I will reward myself with a $100 steak for dinner. And partway through, you'd be like, I don't really need that. And it's that same kind of mindset. Like, I don't need a $100 dinner, but I will not lose $100.
So what is it? So so if I'm going to do this resolution, right? Like, the idea, let's say I'll do dry January. And except I get a Florida exception from the times I'm in Florida. Maybe I could, comment on this video or on this podcast or on our Substack or on any of the social media where we promote it. And if I don't succeed, I'll give somebody who comments $100.
Can I also chime in and say, I don't think you're going to do it? And can I be part of the participation?
Sure. You could comment in there.
Yes.
But I think, once again, given the $100 would kill me. So I would be pretty sure I'd succeed once we set up the ground rules and the date and everything.
So what's another commitment device so if somebody else is thinking, they want to lose weight, but maybe they're not willing to give up $100. Can you think of another commitment device that could get somebody into the gym, on a treadmill, something like that?
Now, most of the ones I've thought of are for money, even if it's not that much. It doesn't have to be $100. Give somebody $10 and let's say they're a big Republican, they'll send it off to, the elect Bernie Sanders fund, or if they're a big Democrat, send it to Trump for America or something, right? I mean, so that's a smaller amount of funds, but
I know of another one. This was on an ABC primetime episode about game theory. It was a mix. So half the show I absolutely love. It's about throwing a bunch of strangers in New York. They have to find each other. So there's like a game theory component. The other half is about behavioral economics. They talk about weight loss as one of the goals. The commitment device they do on there, they had a bunch of people who said they wanted to lose weight. They photographed all of them in their underwear, and they told them if they do not lose weight, that they would broadcast those photos on ABC primetime on nationwide television.
No kidding.
If they did not lose weight. So that, for me, would be an incredible motivation to lose weight. Shame is another commitment device. So making some sort of public embarrassment could do it.
Yeah. I mean, you're forced to, like, how do you commit where the person has to follow through? I mean, it's rare where you'll have a primetime show or something, but if somebody doesn't,
you could put it on Facebook, right? You have enough friends and family that you do not want to see. They do not want to see you that way.
Sure.
You don't want them to see you that way.
I mean, it could be if somebody's forced to sing, although then, you've got to actually go through, somebody else has to exert the cost to try to get them to do this thing they really don't want at the end.
So there's that one. And then there's a couple other ones. I've heard of these. I've never actually looked into it. There is a company. It's either an app or a web. It's got to be an app based off of how I summarize this. You sign up, you link your bank account with it. So this is gonna be a money one. You link your bank account with it, and you have to turn your location on and actually check into the gym for at least 30 minutes, 4 days. Like, you set the parameters of how often you want to be there. And if you don't do it, each week they deduct money out of your bank account. So they
kidding.
don't do it as like an all or nothing, but it's hey, you only went 3 times this week, minus $50. And they just take it away. But then I think they set it up where it has those extra things, right? Like if you're a Democrat, like they'll donate it to like the NRA. And so like, you could pick where the money goes as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of those kind of commitment mechanisms are pretty fascinating to think through. I mean, it's part of the reason, like on a particular day, if I'm thinking I could work from home for a couple hours or go into the office, if you drive to go into the office, it's a bit of a commitment mechanism. Or I'm fine. I work out in my basement a fair amount. We have a treadmill, or do like P90X videos for anybody who knows and loves Tony Horton. But
those are old.
Well, they're old. Yeah, they're the originals all the way through the most current ones. Yeah, he's not doing well anymore, but those videos still work for me at least. But some people, right, driving to the gym, you're never going to drive to the gym and then stay for 5 minutes. Whereas you could walk to your basement. I'm not feeling this today, and then just go upstairs after 5 minutes. So that's a commitment mechanism in the sense that you feel like you've really wasted time if you take a drive to the gym and come back after just a few minutes. It's not dealing with like a weight loss bet, which is the typical New Year's Eve thing. But gym memberships, right? They skyrocket right after, and then people stop using them. So what's a way to keep people going to the gym other than money?
Have you listened to the NPR podcast about the behavioral economics of Planet Fitness? I'm guilty of this. So
I don't know that I have. I'm not certain that I have listened to this one.
So I assign it to my students. I'm gonna pour myself a little bit more for this one too. I assign it to my students as their podcast for the very end of the semester. Have you ever had a Planet Fitness or any similar gym membership?
No, and I mean we have a free membership to the SU gym.
So I had a Planet Fitness, same idea. I live next to a Planet Fitness. I was like, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get a gym membership. So for those of you who have never done this, so the math will be perfect. I could teach you, but we can also teach anyone who's listening. Planet Fitness, shockingly cheap gym membership. Like if you just want the basic, just you, I want to say it's like $5 a month, $10 a month. It's so cheap. But their catch is they make it so incredibly cheap and incredibly difficult to cancel. So if you sign up, they'll have like no sign up fees, all sorts of to get you in there. And it's $5 a month, but then like right at some point you might quit, right? That's kind of the whole idea of the behavioral, we're overconfident about our future selves. Like I'll go to the gym for a month and a half and then stop going. So the idea of what they do is they set the bar super, super low, way cheap compared to a normal gym. At the hopes that you just never remember it or you forget about it. And that in order to cancel it, you can't call them and cancel it. You cannot cancel it online. You have to go to the gym in order to cancel it. So the only way to cancel the membership is to do something you haven't been doing, which is to go to the gym. Oh,
that's funny. There is there's a Friends episode where they want to cancel, I think it's either Chandler or Joey wants to cancel, and they keep trotting out, basically for Chandler and Joey, they trot out beautiful women in front of them. Why would you want to cancel? And then they end up with some enhanced thing. So they were going to then cancel their bank, quit, switch banks. And of course the bank does the same thing. And but no, that's interesting. I'll do a shout out here for anybody who's in or around Selinsgrove. We actually have a Planet Money reporter and author of The Bond King, Mary Childs, for a book. That's a great book. If you need a book recommendation, could be one of your 52 for the next year. She's coming to campus on Wednesday, April 17th, 2023. So for anybody who's watching or listening, and it'll be open to the public and should be a fascinating talk.
On that Planet Money example, I had my gym membership for like a full year. I just paid them $5 a month, and I would not go in and cancel it. One good thing that came out of the pandemic, they removed that policy. We were allowed to cancel it over the phone because they didn't want people coming into the gym.
No kidding.
That was how I got out of it.
That's fascinating. It's a lot of it's interesting things. If you have I think the kind of the lesson, if you have a New Year's resolution that you think is important, what's some commitment device you can give to it? Like, what's something you would lose if you give it up? If you give up your idea, and who would hold you to that?
Maybe we should offer commitment devices for them and just say, look, post your New Year's resolution. Yeah. We'll check in with you in a month, 2 months, or whatever the goal is. And if you lose, you have to send us some money.
You could ideally, you have to send us money, or you could send us that photo you don't want to post, or whatever it is, right? We could be the commitment mechanism for that. But
I'm really curious if there's other, like, what type, like, I'm curious about what things people commit to that are not like diet related, health related, weight related. But I'm also really curious if people have really creative commitment devices.
Yeah. I guess that's something. Please leave it in the comments if you have something. That'd be kind of cool to hear everybody's. What if you have a resolution? What is it? And well, by the time, some of you will see this before or listen to this before New Year's Eve. Some of it might be after, if it's, say, a week or 2 weeks or a month after, and you had one and you failed.
And you quit already. Let
us know how long it lasted, right? Because I know the average is not very long. I think
no.
So, well, we always like to have. We're in episode 2, but our goal is to end we want to talk about papers, but also about pop culture, and we're going to combine these this time to talk a little bit about K-pop. So, Jadrian, you had a paper come out. Was it last year, or was it 2020 on using K-pop to teach? Do you want to?
I would say last year. Let's go with last year. And thankfully, one of the songs is about behavioral economics. So let me save mine, because mine is connected back to our talk. So let's have you go first, because you just finished a new video on the closure of the K-pop Broadway show.
Yeah, we're recording this on Tuesday, December 13th, and on the 11th, the K-pop musical closed. The timing of it was kind of fascinating because Wednesday, the 7th, it would have been Wednesday the 7th is when they announced it. Mm-hmm. To announce that you're closing and then close in 4 days in December is somewhat rare, although I just heard of a second show that's doing it, which tells you they were doing really, really poorly by contract.
So for people who don't know, we should probably tell people what K-pop is. We know what it is, but maybe we should actually describe it for people.
So K-pop is just the shorthand for Korean pop, the genre of music by Korean pop stars. BTS is the
BTS.
That's the band I can name. I'm guessing. Okay. I know you've gone into this. You could probably name a whole lot more.
I don't know. I don't know if I can name that many more. Okay, so for those of you who have never heard K-pop, it's pop music. It's usually lots of instrumentals. Sometimes it's sung in English. Sometimes it's sung in Korean. It doesn't have to just be in Korean. BTS is probably the most famous current K-pop group. #1 hits, Billboard albums, Time. I think they were Time Group of the Year, Musician of the Year.
They were on Saturday Night Live. I know.
Yeah, right. Like BTS is the massive one. Blackpink is huge. Okay. So that's kind of like the girl band version of that, but also like top selling female artist group, played at Coachella, all sorts of stuff. Those of you who are not familiar with current K-pop might remember some older K-pop. Do you know I bet you know the older K-pop massive mega worldwide hit by Psy is his name.
Oh, the Gangnam Style.
Gangnam Style. Yeah, that's considered K-pop. So if you haven't heard the new stuff, Gangnam Style, hit viral song was also one of them.
We used to have we had Just Dance, whatever it was for, and we paid the $1 to get that, and so I've actually done the Just Dance version of that with the Wii. So maybe that's a video that was not recorded, but would have been a bad commitment mechanism.
I was gonna say that should be your commitment. Yeah, we'll just post that video.
Yeah, that would be pretty bad.
But so let me give some people some some context of just how big K-pop is. And I think that also helps with how shocking this closure actually is. So I just pulled up Spotify's 2022 most streamed global artists, right? So like this is, I mean, globally, not just in the United States, but around the world. Taylor Swift comes in at number 2, right? And with the massive year that she's had, she's ranked number 2. Granted, Bad Bunny's number 1. It's not K-pop is number 1, but BTS is number 5.
Okay.
And so when you're thinking about kind of like worldwide phenom, BTS is up there as most streamed. They're number 4 on the most viral artists. I'm kind of scrolling through to see if I see BTS pop up anywhere else. But I think like in 2021, like they were ahead of Taylor Swift. Some years they're higher, some years they're lower. But those of you who don't know, K-pop, absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely huge. So the grosses for the show were stunningly low. But for Broadway shows, their single most lucrative week is the week between Christmas and goes through New Year's Eve. It's a number of people will travel to New York City. And then, of course, you've got tens of millions of people within an hour or so of the city who might choose, oh, we've got a week off. Let's go see a show or two. It's the time where it's the most lucrative week, right? You could make a fortune that particular week. They were doing so poorly that they had 2 weeks left and they figured it's not worth waiting. Let's just close right now. And if you look, and we'll put a link to this, but I think it's the Broadway League, releases the grosses for every single show. It averaged over the past basically 10 weeks or so under 150,000 a week, which you probably need to be at about $500,000 a week most of the time just to survive. I think they had 22 actors in the show. Broadway minimum is about $2,500 a week for those individuals and salary, but then there will be all the benefits. And then, of course, you need just all the other people. So to run the show, even though this was a smaller theater, I mean, it was probably $500,000 plus in running costs. And so they were so far below. It's a little bit shocking, although, I mean, if you're thinking what's the typical Broadway audience, it's probably 50 plus year olds. And the Venn diagram that shows people over 50 and K-pop fanatics, I mean, I'm sure there's a small overlap, but it's not a massive overlap. So the people with the most purchasing power and the biggest Broadway fans just weren't this market. By contrast, so that musical actually got reasonably good reviews. In contrast, the Neil Diamond musical is much more mixed in reviews. But, once again, think the audience, people over 50 are the ones who have a lot of money and typically go, it's the Neil Diamond musical. They're going to play Sweet Caroline. And it's doing reasonably well. And that one, even despite the critics actually not liking that as much, it's selling much better and has not, I don't know when they might choose to close, but there's been no announcement of that, and they'll be around for a while.
Oh, so you made a comment earlier. I want to make sure you explain it for everybody who's listening or watching. You said they still had 2 more weeks of their kind of rent out of the theater, but they chose to close instead. Did you say something like that?
No. I think. I mean, I don't know their details on that, but
okay.
They chose to close on the 13th, when all they had to do was last 12 more days. And then the most lucrative week of the year was
okay.
So they figured they're going to lose so much in the next 12 days. It's not worth, they would not recoup it by staying open the single most lucrative week of the year for Broadway shows. So the Broadway, the average show grosses about 50% more.
Okay.
That particular week. I mean, it's just an absolute windfall. Most Broadway shows sell their tickets at discounts various times. I mean, that's just a week. Instead of 50% discounts, you might get a 20% discount, or sometimes you won't get one because everybody wants to go see a show and the shows are just sold out. So therefore making quite a bit more money.
Man, I was going to try to get you to talk that into a sunk cost example. So that you can say, right, it doesn't matter what they've paid before. just go ahead and shut it down. Realistically, they probably have a lease on the theater for the rest of them. I would imagine they have a monthly lease. I mean, I can't.
I don't know. I don't know exactly how it goes. You could probably argue, though, that the variable costs are exceeding the fixed costs anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's right. That's the right way to do it. Just whatever you had invested is gone.
I'm sure if they're closing, it's the magnitude of the money they're losing variable wise. But there's a significant fixed cost in starting it up, right? I mean, the author had to come up with all of this. There's all of the training with the individuals that you have to pay to get them up to speed to start on Broadway.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a significant, you've got to do all of the sets and the construction. So there is a significant amount of fixed costs that are now, there's costs that are now sunk that indeed should be ignored. But
people have a really hard time in doing that. See, I was trying to loop it back into behavioral economics. That way we were on the same topic. So I could do mine. So I really should know the answer to this, but I'm going to say last year, I joined a couple colleagues from Australia. So Wayne Geerling was kind of the main person who connected me, and then we worked with. I've worked off and on with like his graduate assistants and at different places, but Wayne and I put together a teaching guide for how you can kind of easily weave in K-pop into your classroom.
Yep.
And I think it's called like Teaching Economics with K-pop. We're not very creative with titles.
Diversifying the use of pop culture in the classroom, using K-pop to teach principles of economics. And you were right, It was last revised February 25th, according to SSRN.
See, Wayne and I are not great at at coming up with these titles. But we're direct. So it was published in the International Review of Economics Education. This got published right before I became an editor there. So I think that's a really good sign that I published a paper and then they decided to invite me to be an editor. So I will say it was before I became an editor. But Wayne and I had talked, and part of the reason we wanted to do the project was, him and I use a lot of pop culture. You use a lot of pop culture, and we realized that our pop culture was very much aligned with, and this I think goes back to your Broadway comment. It's aligned with the things that I like, which is generally shows that were produced in the United States with a relatively large white cast, and they're speaking English because that's who I am. And so him and I recognize like we're missing a lot of really good stuff that is happening in other countries. I think like even before I kind of started talking to Wayne about this, I guess I should ask you, do you have any, I guess before you heard Wayne and I talking about it, did you have any pop culture clips that you got from like overseas, international stuff?
I mean, Golden Balls.
Yeah, right. So
that's Britain, right?
A British game show, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they certainly have a diverse mix of songs, like the diversity represented in the people and the songs that I would play, but from overseas, probably not very many.
Yeah,
I can't think of one, so it's certainly not very many, and the answer might indeed be zero.
Mine is if not zero, it's like one. And I probably use like dozens of pop culture songs, all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So we had found even an article that I don't remember the name of it, but it was 50 years of great songs to teach economics. And if you go through and look at the songs that they highlight, it's artists from the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and Australia. Like it was the same, right? The Anglosphere, which again, that's what we speak English. That's what we're used to. And so Wayne and I were like, hey, is there some way that we could do something different? So this was the start of a series of papers. And so we went with K-pop first because it's that like kind of what we talked about earlier, big global phenomena in terms of just power across the country. So one of the clips, I can talk about it briefly, but we can post a link inside the Substack and then the YouTube channel. It's Blackpink is the name of the group. So that's the big female group. And the name of the song is called Kill This Love. And so it is purely about sunk costs. And kind of the whole story behind the song is about how things aren't going well, nothing's going right, they're falling out of love with each other, and what they should do is, and it's over and over, is kill this love. Like, it's time to end this relationship.
Yeah.
Stop doing something that's not working out really the way that you expect it to.
Yeah.
So we like that song as like an example of sunk costs and how people make poor decisions about sunk costs. So that's in the paper, but it's a good song to listen to. It's also very, very catchy. So we like that one.
That's cool. And I mean, it ties a little bit into behavioral economics, as we say.
Exactly. So I
yeah,
figured
it's a good
it's
paper.
better for me to go second.
We could put a link into the description on that one. Well, it's been fun chatting again, and appreciate everybody tuning in. Jadrian, any closing words of wisdom as everybody who's listening to this is about to approach 2023?
No, but I will say, if you're going to do a dry January, my Virgil's handcrafted vanilla cream. This is not an ad. We're not getting paid for this. But it was good.
Okay.
It was actually, I like vanilla cream. They had a vanilla cream and a root beer. A little sweet, but it says it has cane sugar, so maybe that might be why. It's pretty good. So
that's good. I might
try Kroger.
At this moment, I'm probably still doing. I think the plan is, dry January asterisk. Is what we would call it. But it's a good way to lose a little bit of weight and try something. The Brits have done that for a while, and I'm like, and I've gone over to England in January, and I've been like, wow, I know what pub culture is over there, and if those are the decisions, this is a big deal. So so we'll see what happens. I guess the next time we record might be before that, but on episode 4, you'll get the update on what's happened. So
they've got to stick around, right? So they've got to subscribe and make sure that they're following along to see if you actually make it.
Yeah. So thanks to everybody who did watch this. Once again, we would love comments on what we can improve, and whether anything we can do better, let us know. I guess now we're committed for at least 4 episodes.
Exactly. We got to find out if your commitment device actually works out.
Yeah, we could make it a commitment device. So why don't we say it here, right? I'll make that a commitment device. So I will be doing that outside the 4 days through January. So if you'd like your shot at my $100, you've got to leave a comment on LinkedIn or on Twitter, on the YouTube comments. Leave it anywhere. We can track all of them down. Mm-hmm. But by having this out there, right, it would absolutely just kill me to have to hand over that money. So I think I'm going to be okay. But
awesome.
We'll get the update.
Good luck, Matt.
Well, thank you. Well, Happy New Year, Jadrian, and Happy New Year to everybody listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.
All right. Bye, everyone.